Hi everyone, welcome to Susie's chat room. As I've said before, I started this YouTube channel when we were all in lockdown because I felt it important that there was something positive that people could watch and maybe be inspired by through the understanding of certain people that you may not know their background and may not even know them. So I'm going to continue this because I still feel it's important. I'm not going to say some people you know, some people you don't know, some people you would like to know, because I've said that all before. Today, I'm going to introduce you to Billie Dean. Now, I must admit, there was a lot of her story that I really didn't know, and so it's been very interesting for me. I'll just read out some of the labels that she goes under. Animal telepath, animal communicator, filmmaker, animal shaman, actress, comedian, journalist, author, and there's probably a lot more that I don't know about. So let us welcome her and see what more she has to say. Hello, Billie. I can see you. Can I?
I can see you. Can you hear me?
I can, yes. All is good. And you've got a very musical background there.
Will we try?
So thank you so much for joining us. I don't know if you've seen any of my other little YouTubes, but the idea is to bring to the public's notice those that I feel are inspirational and positive, and others can take what they will from this, that it should infuse them with the idea that the world is not as it's always portrayed in the media and other places, that it is still a beautiful world. One of the questions I always like to ask is where did it all begin with you? Did you champion animals at a very young age, or was there an incident that prompted this direction?
Yeah, I've been able to hear the animals and feel them. So I'm a telepath and an empath, and that's really what the silent language is. Forever. Like I think we all are, but I didn't forget. So when I was growing up, I started in the city, and I had a dog, and my dog and I would communicate all the time. And then my mother died when I was 8, and I was sent to the country to stay with my aunt and uncle, and that really was a turning point for me, because suddenly I was up against the farming community and the horse community and just everything that was going on. And I was very, very attracted to trees and shrubs. And so when my cousins would sort of, come with sticks and just bash a shrub, I'd be going, no, don't do that, don't do that. So it started, the activism actually started for me at a very, very young age. I was 8 when I moved to the country, and that's really when I started speaking. I started speaking out against horses who were ridden so hard their mouths would be bleeding, against, my uncle when he chopped the head off a duck in front of me, and the headless duck chased me around the wood heap. And then I was expected to eat it, and that's really when I became a vegan, because I realized where it came from. Yeah. But I knew what that duck was experiencing. So when people say humanely slaughter, I go, oh, you got to be joking. There's no such thing as humane slaughter. That's just ridiculous. There's fear, there's pain, there's terror, and there's also the grief of the other animals who are left behind. And, so I was a big champion for stones and trees. I had a big fight which really set up another thing in me when I found that I was powerless. I was out the back of Burke on a shearing holiday with a couple of girls, and was staying in a caravan, and the other girls wanted to make a cubby house, and I'm going, oh, a cubby house is great, until I realized that they were going to strip the branches of this old tree, and it was 1964, and it was like a massive drought out there. And so I just went to bat for this tree, and they wouldn't listen. So I actually flew at them. I'm not proud, but that shows my passion, you know, with nails and teeth. And I was furious. I was doing everything I could as a 10-year-old to protect that tree, and all I did was get sent away and in trouble. And it was like, people need to listen, and they didn't listen then. And really, a lot more people are listening, but a lot of, you know, the people in power aren't listening still. And yeah, so that's, but yeah, so I've always been an activist, really, since I was 8. But even then, you know, my dog would tell me things, and I would try and explain to other people. It was in the days when you could just, you know, as a little toddler, I was riding around on my bike with my dog, just unattended, going everywhere, and always heading off to the park. Always wanted to go to the park, always wanted to be in nature, and I'd be communicating with the trees. I remember coming back, walking into the police station, I must have been about 5, and going, you know, the trees are saying this, and they'd be going, okay, off you go. But yeah,
I think you're probably the first person I've spoken to that actually says that the trees communicate. I know how they feel. I can feel their energy. I love to put my hands close to them and feel that energy. But to actually get messages direct, this must be amazing, because they're such majestic creatures.
oh, they really are. And yeah, they have a heartbeat, they have a societal system, and they're truly amazing. And it's interesting here at A Place of Peace. I call it sort of like living in a liminal world. When I'm out here, it's really very, very, very different to when I go into town. It's sort of like, because that's what I'm doing every day, is communing with the trees, and, you know, the shrubs, and the, you know, the stones, and, you know, everything. You'll have to excuse me, I have a dog. Ben, it's okay. I have a dog with me, of course.
That's okay. I do too, but he's sound asleep.
Yeah, Ben isn't, but he always likes to come in when I'm doing one of these. So yeah, the trees are there. I've had, the trees are amazing. I've got a stand of elders here who, well, we've been here nearly 25 years, and suddenly, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 years ago, they called me over, and they started to teach me, and they also brought in the Fae. And I've always had a relationship with the Fae, but this was different. There was an elder there who would just come there, so it became like a portal, and teach me lessons, and help me become more of the person that I am today. I think I've still got a fair way to go, but but anyway, they would push me, and there he is. And the elders, yeah, the trees are amazing. And it was interesting, before the fires came, they knew the fires were coming, and they told me to pick up all the sticks within their circle, and so I dutifully did that. And then when the fire was coming, I said, are you going to be safe? And they said yes. And the fire was raging, and it came about that far close to them. Wow. which was pretty amazing. And I was kind of in shock when I went back. I was so relieved to see that they were there, because they're really good friends of mine. So I was relieved that they weren't hurt, but all behind them, and like I said, right down to about, you know, this far, they were there.
Well,
The fire
that was a lesson in itself, wasn't it? To have faith in the elements.
Yes, yes, yeah. Well, the fire was interesting because I can usually communicate with fire and the elements, and I knew that fire had a mind of his own. It was very interesting tuning into that fire. But I usually, like, when I'm faced with fire, I bring up all my strength and we communicate, and I protect. And I've done that before and force the fire away. But with this fire, the first time I smelled it, I just went to jelly, and I thought, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. This is not normal. I'm not friends with this being. This is a different being. And I spent the next 3 days seeking to befriend the being. And what was interesting was that, but I couldn't build a trust. I didn't trust, because it was just something different. But what was beautiful was that the fire wasn't beautiful, but I was grateful that the fire went around the sanctuary, and didn't come this way to us here. So all the animals were saved.
Perhaps it was something to do with the way that the fire was started.
Actually, I'm angry enough to talk about this. The fire was started by lightning, in the park, in the forest, and the Parks and Wildlife here decided in their ultimate wisdom not to put it out, and wouldn't let our guys put it out, so that after 3 days of raging, it was a firestorm with its own. It just exploded, and then went and put our district into a disaster zone and took out homes. And I was there watching the wildlife come out of the forest, with just shocked and dazed, and some of them didn't make it, and it was the most horrendous time. And I can't believe that anyone during a drought would say, oh no, don't put out the fire while it's only 5 hectares. I couldn't believe that, and I can't believe that they're not shut down or somehow held accountable. But so far, nothing.
Very sad.
Mm.
Let's go back to when you mentioned the Fae and the Fairy Folk. Now, how is your communication with them? Do you see them visually, or do you just understand that they're there?
Oh no, I see them. They're all around. The Fae teacher that I had, I just want to get one thing straight. When people talk about fairies, they think of fairies like little things that I call nature spirits. So to me, they're the nature spirits. But the actual Fae look like us. They're tall. Not that I'm tall, but you know, they're human size. They look like humans, and they're mostly like the ones that I deal with are the Tuatha De Danann from Ireland, and you know, so they're not little tiny people. They're tall, magical people, and or not so tall, but tall, human size. So, and
maybe maybe some that have seen them would call them angels or spirits and not realize that they were the fairies. Or do they look totally different?
They just look like us. And I mean, they're called the shining ones. They're called the people of peace. I can usually tell an incarnated elf or fae person. And you'll often find them either as animal warriors or artists like poets. So, part of my work has been going, you. and yeah, so it's interesting. But this guy, this teacher, I was filling up a water trough once, and he strode towards me. I looked up and he was striding towards me, put his hands on my shoulders, and he said, "Right." Okay. So yeah. And I realized that's my. I've had tons of experiences with them. It's really very interesting. So I've written a deck of fae cards that are just this far away from coming out, with all the teachings that they've passed down to me.
That would be wonderful. There's not enough known about them. I did hear a story once or I read a story that that the planet that they were on was going to implode, and that they came down to our Earth when Lemuria was still above water, and that they started off there looking as we do. But when others came to Lemuria and discovered or rediscovered that area, they were not that friendly. So they very gradually moved and became invisible to the people that had, I won't say invaded, but had populated Lemuria at that time. Do you think there was any truth in that I heard?
Well, I haven't heard that version, but the old Irish legend is that the Tuatha De Danann came, and they were gods and goddesses, and brought with them 4 magical tools, and they populated Ireland. And then the Milesons came and defeated them with an amazing bard, Imogen, and he really defeated them. And so they decided that they would go underground. So there is this analogy that they are underground, but as we know, underground doesn't actually mean living in the ground so much as living in across the dimensions, or across the veil. And I mean, there is a world that's underneath this one, and so, but I just don't want people thinking, oh, they live in caves. They don't live in caves. No. So it's another world.
Yeah. Do you feel the veil is lifting?
The veil is so thin. I've been told I'm living in 2 worlds right now. So, and like, I'm seeing spirit things. I usually see spirit things when I do see spirit things a lot, like all the time, but now it seems like it's all the time. The spirit animals in the house everywhere, and usually that's when they come, particularly when someone's dying. So I always get a heads up that someone's passing, but this has been going on for months and months and months, and there's just so many of them that when I talked to spirit, they just said, yeah, you're living in 2 worlds now. So that's what we're doing. That's how they do it.
Yeah. Moving from 3rd to 5th dimension or beyond?
Well, that is what most people, how they describe it. But I think we've got a lot of work. I think there's, in the spiritual community, there's sadly many people who just think that it's going to be automatic, or that all they have to do is wait for a shift of energy. I don't, my experience is that it may take a bit more work on our behalf. And it's going to take change on our behalf. And a lot of people are very resistant to change. We're seeing a lot more change. We're seeing a lot more kindness. We're also seeing a lot more darkness. And I've never felt so stressed about what's happening here in Australia to the animal kingdom, particularly with this particular government. So I've spent the last 12 months especially fighting the government on their decisions with things like 1080 and kangaroo culling and brumby culling and everything else they're doing, and cutting down trees, because we've just lost so much, and there was so much trauma to the earth. And this is where, you know, they're just so black and white and everything's, but I see in this sort of rich world of colors where I'm feeling the earth and I'm feeling the trauma and I'm feeling the trees. I've done so much work here during the fires to give back to, like, every time I put down a food station, it was an offering to the earth as well as to the animals. And, you know, we did that for months until everything sort of healed. But there's still trauma in the mountains. And, you know, for there to be now 1080 baits sitting in those mountains, thanks to the government putting out more trauma, it's not allowing healing to happen. It's just more trauma and more humans being predator and more, you know, just it's just not kindness. And we need this switch. I studied with the Andean shamans, and one of the things that they were saying is that the world will turn right side up, meaning they were talking about the matriarchy and the feminine and the nurturing that goes along with that. But, you know, I'm desperate for that. And I think everybody is, all our kind are desperate for that. It just seems like we still have to agitate a lot. We have to speak up a lot. We have to be, you know, there is a spiritual school of thought that if we become enlightened, then it ripples out. Well, that's all very well, but I think that if people, when you break the mold by going that extra mile, then it gives people permission. It pierces that darkness within them, and that denseness, that forgetting, that programming. So here at A Place of Peace, what we're doing now is sort of like really about to reveal, really lift the curtain on what's happening here, with the stories of the animals. Like the horses, the wild horses here didn't want me to talk about them for a very long time, but now I've got permission to talk to them about them because of what's happening to the brumbies. The brumbies are being eradicated by the government because I think they want to put in, they've said they want to put in an Aspen and an international airport. So they're using the brumbies as a big distraction and a scapegoat. And my personal philosophy is that if I hear a calling, I go for it, and they're calling. So I'm working really hard to try and change all the bad publicity they've been getting. So we tell the stories that, and the truth about the brumbies is that they're wild horses living in the wild in their natural equine society. And for years I've had horses. I've been riding since I was 6. I stopped riding as soon as I got the wild horses because I realized it was rude. And we've been doing natural kind of horsemanship for over 20 years. So, you know, we were early takers of that. So I've been around horses for a long time, and you don't consider them as family. You've considered them as your family, but you don't consider their family. You know, it was, you know, Solly and I, he was my horse, he was my friend. We had this really close connection, and I would listen to him well. You know, I would always honor him and listen to him, what he wanted to do and where he wanted to go. So I had that going. But meeting the wild horses, and we've got 60 here at A Place of Peace. And so we're watching and learning how they interact and what their family is, and how the stallion is so beautiful to the foals and plays with them, and how, you know, some gelded stallions will, you know, have a family, you know, and even stallions and gelded stallions will take a wife, and that will be their wife for life. And people don't know these things. And so they, you know, they're called feral pests, and so that it really distances you. And people go, oh yes, well, they're feral pests and they can be culled. Well, for me, no, they're individuals with families and a society, and they have formed deep bonds. A stallion or a mare, when they are pairing, when they lose each other, they grieve forever. They just don't stop grieving. There was this beautiful story from the States about a woman who managed to pair up a stallion and a mare who are wild horse, and they've got a wild horse sanctuary like we do. But they'd been separated for 17 years. And you know, they recognized each other. And that from that moment on, when they were reunited, they've never been separate. You know, they're inseparable. Yeah. So this is what I mean. I mean, you know, this attitude that we have towards animals, or 3,000 have been culled, you know, I mean, it's like a war. And so I feel very, very strongly that here we're not just rescuing animals, we're fighting for them. And I'm in a unique position where I am a communicator, I am a telepath, and I can get the story underneath the, you know, just the story of them being rescued, or what their terrible past was. I'm not so much interested in that anymore. It's more, you know, what can we do to make life better? And we have a lot of social change to do. And so that's what I mean when people say we're going into the fifth. Well, that's all very well, but unless we have the foundation for the fifth, we're not going to. How can we have a society that's so barbaric, and then suddenly overnight it changes, when people are still eating meat, are still contributing to culling because they don't stand up and say no? We're still contributing to the slaughterhouses because we're not standing up and saying no. So, you know, I have seen that a lot of people are just not able to eat meat anymore, and that is a beautiful change. But people, they're not, again, not understanding that so long as we have demand, animals are suffering. And so long as animals are suffering, then there's suffering in the world. And if we can stop that suffering, then we're getting closer to a different dimension.
Yeah. We're really, what we're really doing is not just saving the animals, but we're saving the people from going down a track that is quite self-destructive, because, you know, not having this empathy towards the animals is really doing them a lot of harm as well. I love the idea of these families that of animals. I too live close to the mountains, and right next to me is a field of cows who I love to just go. They just stare at me, and I just love their company. Even though we're not best friends, I still like to be near them. And it breaks my heart when they give birth and they cry and cry when the babies go, and they cry all night. They might cry non-stop for 3 days until they're just exhausted, and I can't sleep. I think, well, why do we do this? Why isn't the mother respected? But of course the answer is that there's a demand, and the people who are, many of the farmers who are animal lovers, they're not really animal lovers. They might love some animals, but others have a different purpose for them. So that, yes, there is a lot of work to be done, and I feel that talking to people like yourself and hopefully getting that out there, that others will question how their reaction to the animal kingdom is, and not just the animal kingdom, but all living species.
It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, the crying, I live surrounded by farmers. So I've got this place of peace, 600 acres in the middle of farmers all around us. And that's really, we started off as a horse rescue. And I could not turn away from, and I was vegan anyway, but I couldn't turn away from the cows who were crying, and we had cows who would break through the fence from next door and come in. And so, we'd have to talk to the farmer, and, because they would communicate with me. In fact, there's reincarnated monks in that herd, and they really wanted me to take them in so they'd be safe. But here we've been able to study cow society, and it's interesting, we're the only place with steers, and the steers have a place in society, and they're terrific uncles. But the other thing that happens is that the mothers take turns in being a nanny. And so it's sort of like having a daycare center with all the little calves, and and they're there, and there's one nanny cow, and they take it in turns to be the nanny cow while the others go off and just play. So graze, and so that's really interesting. And we're very, very big on keeping families here, very, very big. Because every single species has a family, and that's of course what we fail to recognize. Our humans, we're so human-centric, whereas my world, because I live with so many animals and I'm observing them and I'm being with them and I'm a communicator, and I've got the fairy influence, because the Fae want us to be more high dimensional. They want us to remember, so they want us to change how we are as well. So we have to be caretakers. We have to be benevolent stewards.
You said the Fae want us to remember. Does this mean that there was a time on Earth when we were compatible with animals and did respect them?
Well, they were.
They were.
They were.
Yeah. But has humankind always felt so superior that they could do what they like with the animal?
Well, the true indigenous people, they were much more aligned. They had much more of an idea of us, like the Native Americans would call them our little brothers and sisters. And that's really how I feel, we are here with hands and heart to take care of our little brothers and sisters who don't always have a hands. And that's not the attitude that we have in our society. Our society is us and them, whereas we're all family. And this is a very indigenous way of thinking. It's also a very very Fae way of thinking as well. And I think that like you get a lot of people thinking, we can go with our bows and arrows, and that's we're pagan. And people will still have drum workshops where they're using culled skins, and they're not making the connection. they're not making that connection. Whereas, you know, quite frankly, I find vegan drums are far superior, and you're not hurting an animal, because if there is a demand, people will kill. And, you know, like from my perspective, humans are incredibly barbaric and quite frankly terrifying. And and it's not a pleasant place to live unless you are surrounded by people like us. You know, it's not easy living in a 3D world, and most of the time I'm not. But when I cross the bridge, it's like going through the veil, and suddenly you're with people who are talking about stock and you've got to get rid of all your stock. I'm going, no, no, they're not stock, they're not commodities, they're people, they're my family. You got to get rid of your stock. You know, during the drought, I had all my cows coming up to me and they were terrified, because all the farmers got rid of all their stock. And I just had to remind them that they were here with me and that I was going to fight tooth and nail to keep them alive. And that's what we did. We went up ourselves so that we could feed them. We just made sure we got through that drought. It was incredibly stressful, but we did it. And then we were hit by fire. It was great. Good initiation.
They would have been so grateful.
I'm grateful we got through, and I was very grateful for when the rain spirits finally blessed us, and it's been beautiful ever since. And not only that, we've had more support from the fires, and that's been a big release as well. So because it is an all-encompassing job.
I can imagine. I know that you put out a video called A New Era for Animals. I've only just discovered it because I looked at whatever I could find about you. Before I go on to A New Era of Animals, I must say that I think it's beholden to everyone that they follow on Facebook or Instagram or whatever to not just take that person at face value of what they're putting out at that point. Because when you see the whole picture of what made this person into who they are today, it's so phenomenal. And I found everything that you did was a real eye-opener, because I've sort of followed you and known about you for years and years, but I only scratched the surface. There is so much more. So thank you. Thank you for being with me today. But going back to A New Era for Animals, do you feel, I haven't seen the video because I didn't know it existed, but I will search it out now. But do you feel this is a new era? I mean, I'm fortunate to know a lot of people who feel like me, or half feel like me. At least they accept how I feel. But do you feel that generally there is a new era dawning? And may I suggest also that the problems that are still surfacing now with our relationship towards animals is a certain generation, and it has gone down. We maybe have got 2 to 3 generations operating with that mindset, but maybe there are just like the crystal children and the rainbow children are being born, and they're so intelligent at such a young age. Maybe they will be our saviors. What do you think about that?
I think that it's kind of dangerous to put everything in the hands of the younger generations. I think that there are, you know, lots of them doing the right things, some amazing things, but we can't let them carry it all. Which is why I say, you know, to the spiritual community, you know, we can't just lie back on our laurels. We have to work on ourselves, be the best versions of ourselves, but we also have to take action. We have to make changes, and that's what people are really resistant to. They don't want to make changes. And I find that, you know, you know, very disheartening. And this meat thing is so programmed, and people are so reluctant to give it up. But there is a huge growth in the vegan community, so that's amazing. Like when I started, you know, you couldn't get anything. I mean, we didn't care. We just had lentils and made do, and you know, we had a really good diet. But now, you know, there's a whole range of cheeses and ice creams and chocolate, and you know, you can get anything. Back in the day, I used to make all my own stuff. You know, I'd bake cakes and, you know, make stuff without eggs, and you know, so you do all that. But yeah, so there is that. The youth are doing amazing things. We have to make changes, and what I want to say is that, for example, my daughter, who's 25 now, as soon as she was verbal, I mean, she never got, like, we don't have meat in the house, but she told my family, I do not eat that. And she was about 1, you know, like she was just turning verbal, because they were, you know, taunting me and offering her some of their Christmas dinner. And it was just, you know, and she's been like that. She's never eaten meat. And she made that choice for herself, even though she's been brought up in a vegan family. She made that choice for herself. You know, she was born like that. So to me, that is going to what you're talking about. They are coming up. Yes, they are. And it's fantastic. But we don't have time for them to carry all that on themselves. We have to also make changes.
Yeah. And that's so difficult, because there are so many things happening in the world today, just generally, as well as the treatment of the animals, that it's almost impossible to break down the resistance to listening to someone else with a different point of view. You know, it's so rigid. As you say, people don't like change, although they have accepted a lot of change that has been imposed on them by the government. And that's a surprising thing. Something that is sensible, wonderful, kind, every lovely word you can think of to do with what we're talking about has met resistance. But something that is potentially not, is totally opposite to that, they've accepted without resistance. So maybe this means that if they can accept all of that, then there is a breakthrough, that they can accept other things as well.
I don't know.
I'm just grabbing at straws here.
You can only hope, you know. I mean, we've got to hope. Sometimes I feel incredibly despairing, particularly when I come across, you know, environmentalists who want to cull. I mean, to me, culling is complete violence. And you even get, you know, sort of really people who I really like, and they're going, oh, yeah, I got to cull them. And I'm going, do you know what culling is? Do you know how violent it is? Have you ever tried to change places and see that you're a kangaroo mother or a wild horse mother, and suddenly, you know, there's all these shots being fired at you, and suddenly your husband's dead, your child is dead, you're wounded, or your child is left alone because you're dead? It is violence, and extreme violence. And yet in our society, we just accept it. You know, I had a big argument with somebody in a group whose name I won't mention, who are violently opposed to having brumbies in the snowies. And they're making up all these lies about them, and they are lies. For example, the corroboree frog is not being killed by brumbies. It's being killed by a fungus, but they're blaming the brumbies. The grasses, the wildflowers, they're all blooming. Everything is wonderful. The moss that they want to protect is all blooming. So, but these are the things that they're saying why we should kill these wild horses. But the violence that is in that particular group, the anger, I'm stunned by it. It's just incredible. So I'm just wondering where that comes from and why it's still there. And I think that there's this huge, on a spiritual level, the new age has happened. You know, we are now in the time of Aquarius. The great feminine is rising. However, all of these people who are still stuck in that old mindset are still clinging on. And I think that on one level, they can feel it, and they can feel that they're losing control. So one of the things that they've got control over is killing. And they don't like the wild horse because the wild horse is free. As soon as a horse is trapped and rehomed, they become, even with the nicest home, they become property and they become slaves. And then they have to do everything the human wants. And for me, living in a wild horse society, it's real slavery. And I think that these are all the things that need to change. But right now, in this time of history, we have to agitate, we have to speak loudly in order to get that change. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And when you were saying about freedom, that the horses or whatever become property and therefore are slaves, it made me realize that, you know, freedom is something that a lot of people don't have either, that we still
Nobody's got freedom. You know, we all think we do.
yeah.
But,
So I think, you know, we need to marry the freedom of the animals along with the freedom of people, that there's a great movement here that we should all be a part of.
I think so. I think that, you know, like people, you know, what's freedom? I mean, we saw last year a lot of people saying, oh, you know, we want our freedom of speech and all that sort of stuff. But I think that it's more than that. Freedom is a mindset. And it's, you know, if enough people have a mindset, then, you know, you're choosing your own reality. You can choose your own timeline. You can choose what you want to exist, or how you want your reality to be, to a certain extent, because we've also got the collective consciousness. But when you know, when people, we exist in this culture that isn't free. It's set up from schools, you know, to create people who will be in the cog system. The song, you know, little houses. You remember that song?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Well, that to me epitomizes everything that is our culture. You know, we're supposed to be this sort of uniform slave race, really. And you know, our television is programming us, and, you know, we're supposed to, you know, like, we don't have TV, but we've, every now and again, we'll go and to someone's place or to a hotel when we're traveling, and we'll throw it on. It's like, oh my God, it's so banal. How can people put up with these ads, you know? And ads are marketing, and marketing is manipulation. And we understand that, you know, those people are trying to make a living. But everything is, if we tease everything apart, like, remember, I mean, coming back to animals, remember bone-handled knives and bone china and premium leather bags. Well, they're all made from, you know, the waste from, you know, the dead animal industries. So, you know, I can never forget my grandmother saying to me, oh, you know, never put these bone-handled knives in through the dishwasher. And once I realized that they were actually made out of bones, I put them through the dishwasher. I really don't care about them. I just want them to go. And I no longer have bone china. You know, it's not a premium thing. It's actually a really horrible thing. And but this is the manipulation that we've been under for so long. And I actually talk about this in my class, 30 Days of Spiritual Wildness. We unravel a lot of those things where we've been taught to be, you know, to buy all these things and made to believe that they're fantastic, like leather couches, fantastic. Well, really, what's a leather couch or a leather, you know, upholstery, anything? It's the dead skins. And, you know, and I hate going to Sydney and going to all the tourist spots where, you know, all you see is kangaroo skins and this, that, and the other, just for the tourists, and they take home a bit of Australia, but what they're taking home is an animal who's been killed and taken away from their family and causing all this suffering. You know, we just, these are the things that we have to unravel and we have to separate ourselves from. And that's what I mean. We're not free until we can make decisions that aren't based on programming. But we're deeply programmed to live this certain way. You know, that I wrote some articles ages ago about this, and one of the things that the Native Americans had this wonderful way of being, where their work was 4 hours a day because they worked together. So imagine just working 4 hours a day, you know, where we work, you know, 80 hours a week.
Well, you probably do.
Because but there, so it's I think we have to go back and think about what's sacred and who are we really as a species and what are we really here for. You know, I've just written an article that looks at this idea of entitlement. You know, the whole, you know, we're going to kill these kangaroos and we're going to do this and we're going to do that because we're entitled. You know, we're entitled to anything that lives if we can make money out of it. That's our, you know, that's our thing. But really there's the other way, which is the more Indigenous way, which is about being obligated to care. And I think that if we can change the mindset of society to feeling obligated to care, and obligation, been trying to find a new word for obligation, because I think that immediately makes people feel heavy. It's not, but it's a different mindset. It's, you know, I'm here to experience life in a body as a spiritual being, expressing myself through acts of kindness. And I'm thinking 7 generations ahead. How will this affect future generations? So for me, as somebody with a very large sanctuary, it's not only just the act of kindness. I have to get this animal out of trouble. This animal is calling me. That's the first layer. But then it's, this animal is now rehabilitating and in peace, and is safe, and that ripples. And not only that, but being out there as a sanctuary and taking in animals, that's a kindness that ripples as well, not just the peace, but the kindness ripples. And then people get inspired by that and they're getting permission to do that. And that's starting to unravel this idea that animals are commodities, you know. And so, you know, from, like, we've been going for, like I said, 25 years. And, you know, there weren't too many people doing it when we started. I remember there was a horse rescue in Sydney. There was some people who were taking in dogs and cats, but you know, that there wasn't much else going on. But now there's so many sanctuaries, and there's wildlife sanctuaries, and there's this and there's that, and it's wonderful. So to me, see, that's where I see the change.
Yeah.
The vegan community and the people who are stepping up and changing, and, you know, with people who are stepping up for, you know, when I think of the climate stuff that's happening, to me, that's not about climate. That's about caring for the planet.
Mm.
You know, and when people go, oh, it's just evolution, it's just what's going to happen. I just go, yes, but do you want to care about the planet or don't you? Because that's what this movement's about. It's about caring. It's about nurturing. It's about, you know, making sure that for the next 7 generations, we've got a planet that, you know, people can exist on and animals can exist on. So, yeah, for me, it's all about the divine feminine, which is all about nurturing and caring and being there for people in, you know, animals in need. And that's really what it's all about. And to me, this is the Fae work as well. It's you know, it's why it's so strong in me, really.
You said a few sentences back that they were calling you. I can't remember which animals we were referring to, but you said they were calling to you. Now, if more people could increase their ability to telepathically communicate with animals, this would make a big difference, because if they can understand what the animal is all about, and if they are actually calling to them, there's no way they're going to do them any harm. So do you teach people how to become telepathically connected to the animal kingdom?
Yes, I do. And I've written about it in my book, Secret Animal Business.
Okay.
I'm about to upgrade that book. I've got a lot of things I have to get back to now that the drought's over. So, because that's been out, I think, 11 years now. I do have classes in animal shamanism, where I teach animal communication. I do have, like I said, I talk about it in Secret Animal Business. And the 30 Days of Spiritual Wildness is a great foundation for all my work, because it really gets people into this mindset of learning to connect deeply with nature and animals. So, you know, we've just, and it's really easy. We've got very short little things for people to do every day, and it just clicks people. It just makes them wake up a little bit more. You know, it just changes people a little bit. Oh, that's a new perception. Oh, that's a new perception. Oh, I could think of that way. You
Yeah.
know, and we do that for 30 days. Or I could take on, or I could do the smiling exercise where I'm smiling at people every day, and that brings me joy because I'm doing joy. Or I could do a kind act every day. You know, and I'm finding my own joy by doing these exercises. And of course, if we find our own joy, it frees other people to do their things. You know, I've met so many people who are so afraid to follow their joy. You know, they don't think that they can survive. And to me, that is part, when we were talking about freedom, it's not freedom when you think that you can't find your joy and survive on it.
Yeah. Because people are not trusting that they can find it, which is very sad. Now, if someone would like to learn more from you, where is the best place for them to go to? Your website, or where would they go to if they wanted to have a course with you, or to be able to telepathically connect with, even if it's just with their pets? I think that would be a beginning for them to take that further. So what would be the best
I think
avenue for them?
yeah, the best way is to get on my mailing lists, because then you won't miss a post.
Okay.
Like, you know, it's really hard on Facebook unless you're doing ads,
Yeah.
to get in front of people's faces. So, you know, I find everything I'm doing is on my newsletter, and my newsletters are very irregular. But if I'm doing things, I let people know. And then that is the best way. So that's on BillieDean.com,
Okay.
and also deeppeacetrust.com.
Okay. I will.
The deeppeacetrust.com is the charity, but usually I do classes to support the charity, to support the sanctuary. So I get people to, you know, charity so that I can use that for hay. You know, the Billie Dean one is that much different, and I've separated the two. I used to just have one, because I wanted to separate my writing life from my, and you know, I do have a great fondness for film, but I'm just not doing so much anymore. So it's really animal activism at the moment, and teaching people is animal activism to me.
Yeah.
You know, helping people understand and inspiring them to do better, and
Yeah. Inspiration is great. And you're very inspirational, so I'm very happy that you have spoken to me today. And we haven't even touched on, you seem to have an amazing husband in Andrew. We haven't touched on all the books that he writes and his own spirituality, and we haven't even gone into the fact that that your film life, that you've been an awarded actress and a comedian, and there's a whole other level to what you have been and possibly still are, especially all your writing and everything else. So maybe we should do this again a little while down the track, and see what else we can talk about, because there's so much in your life that I find terribly interesting.
there is. Thank you. I would love that. That'd
Okay.
be awesome. Yeah. Always happy to talk. It's always fun, you know, especially with people who, you know, are ready and willing to hear, and you know, it's something that I'm being, you know, pushed out to do again now, with, you know,
Yeah.
by the Fae and
This
the
this is a very good time, because people had an unusual year last year where many were in lockdown, unable to move or go about their usual business, and they had to turn themselves inside out and start thinking about who they are, and have a lot more time on their hands to read and think about life. So I think that has contributed in a positive way. It's a sort of a shift that they've maybe got to know themselves more, and trying to do something about it. So I feel there's a little bit more openness now because of that. So let us meet again in the future. But for now, I will say thank you so much for being here this morning, and I look forward to putting the YouTube up and allowing other people to also hear what we've been talking about, or you've been talking about. I've just listened.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I've enjoyed it, and been a lot of fun.
Thank you. So enjoy the rest of your busy day, and give as many animals a kiss from me as you possibly can. And say that's from me, and they'll
I'm
know.
surrounded. I'm surrounded by them. I've got goats just there banging around on the veranda, and you know, there's people banging everywhere. Yeah, there's kind of no separation. You know, they're everywhere. We've got sheep and goats just out there, but I can hear them banging around.
Isn't that a beautiful way to live?
Well, it is. It's really nice, and they're all good friends. You know, like
Yeah.
we're good friends with them, and they're a delight. And uh, you know, it's wonderful, and I love sharing about them. And I hope that my sharing about them, you know, helps inspire others to see them as, you know, beyond stock and beyond feral pest. And
Mm.
you know, that's where I'm feeling most called at the moment, and to get to know these amazing characters. You know, like the experiences that we've been having with the wild horses lately has just been mind-blowing. And to me, it's a privilege. And I was thinking about it. There's this life isn't easy. It's a lot of hard work, and you're outside in all kinds of weather. But it makes you feel truly alive. When you're outside and it's dark and it's raining and you're out, with dealing with all kinds of dramas, it just makes the sitting inside, like most people do, just seem really tame. And like, when I'm outside with those animals, I feel, if I can say it, I feel like I'm as wild as they are, because you're out with the elements and you're living this wild life. And I now call our sanctuary the wild sanctuary, because we've got wild cats and wild horses and wild cows and wild sheep, like no one's tame except for the goats, because most of them were brought up in the house, but no one's, and they were wild goats. So we're kind of the wild sanctuary. And it's also why we're not open to the public, because they're not tame. They don't want to pet. Half the time they don't even like. I always ask permission. Can I take your photo? Because half the time they don't even want that. So, and I found that when strangers do come, all the horses, for example, just disappear. They just go. So I don't know. It's just hard work. You come and you're exhausted, but you're alive, and that's the human experience that we really need to. People can live that through me sharing that. But I think I've realized that that's something that the Fae wanted me to share when they're shaking me by the shoulder saying, right, because it's so important that we remember what wild is, what freedom is, and what it's like to be undomesticated. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I'm sure all the animals in your sanctuary think of you as a wild woman too. That's why they relate to you.
I thought of myself as a wild woman. Yeah. But I have been thinking a lot about that difference between, being in the house and doing, office stuff and house stuff, to being out in the paddock in all weathers. And just, if I don't get my nature fix, I think I'd go nuts. Just, like, to me, all the time, the river's speaking, the stones are speaking, the air is speaking, the wind is speaking, the trees are calling me over. Come over here. Come and talk to me. Okay. I'll just put down this last bit of hay. I'll be there in a sec. And the animals are communicating with me all the time. So it's really a very different world, I guess. And I forget how different it is.
Very, very magical.
And I forget, and people keep saying to me, you've got to write this down. I'm going, well, doesn't everyone live like this? But I forget that people don't. And I feel very privileged. Like I said, it hasn't been easy, but it is. It's magical.
Well, that's a lovely note to end on today, that everyone should find a life that gives them the same kind of magic, because that's what it's all about, a life well lived.
Yes, a life well lived. That's it. And it doesn't have to be, I think, a lot of people think that it has to be easy. I'm saying it doesn't have to be easy, but you have to recognize where your spirit calling is, and walk into that. Don't be afraid of it.
True. Well, we will speak again. And
I look forward to that.
And now I've got to go and get a nature fix myself. Fortunately for me, I just have to walk out the door and you know, unfortunately, that there are so many people who don't have nature so close by, and so maybe just listening to you will bring all of that a little closer to them as they listen and watch you. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your busy day.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking with me.
Thank you. Bye bye.